Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12:23. You're with me, Emily Carver and Tom Harwood. Now, the government has announced what it calls a golden age of nuclear energy as the Sizewell C power plant on the Suffolk coast gets the go-ahead as part of a wider £14 billion investment in the nuclear sector.
Well, the construction of Sizewell C will create 10,000 jobs, so say the government, and power around 6 million homes. Yes, that's 6 million homes. Well, the Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, says that nuclear energy is critical to the government's net zero goals.
OK, well, shall we go live to Suffolk now and speak to GB News political editor Christopher Hope. Christopher, Ed Miliband seeing nuclear as the way forward. Tell us more.
That's right, Tom and Emily. Welcome to Suffolk. We've been hearing from the Prime Minister here talking about the value of nuclear, the energy mix, as he calls it, as we go towards this net zero target in 2050. But I wanted to ask him about what Nigel Farage has been saying about coal mines in South Wales. Here's what the PM told GB News moments ago. You're committing billions of pounds to nuclear power, but Nigel Farage wants to open coal mines if he wins power in Wales. Would you block him from doing that?
Well, I want to go forward, not backwards, and Nigel Farage is going backwards. The future is in renewables, in clean power, where we have complete control over our energy. And I'm really pleased with this announcement today, which is a huge project. We haven't done a project like this in this country for 30 years. China and France have been doing it, but not Britain. And I want Britain to be making sure that we've got the secure energy of the future. This is 10 years worth of jobs, 10,000 jobs. Here at this college in Suffolk, you can see for the apprentices, it's their future that is tied up with this project. Of course, there's the small modular reactor announcement for Rolls-Royce as well, a real statement of intent that we're going to take control of our own energy. That means independence, security, and driving down those energy prices. So we're looking forwards. Nigel Farage, I'm afraid, is looking backwards.
And you would block him doing that?
Well, he's looking backwards, and we look forwards.
The spending reviews tomorrow. Your manifesto says Labour has a straightforward vision for policing and criminal justice. When you call the police, they should come. When you report a crime, it should be properly investigated. But rank and file officers are worried about this deal hammered out by Yvette Cooper. Will we be less safe after your spending review?
No, we'll be more safe. There's money going into policing, into security, and that is really important, particularly coming from my background. I was chief prosecutor for 5 years, prosecuting cases across England and Wales. So this is a core belief of mine. Those extra police officers will be neighbourhood police officers, and I think that will give people the reassurance in their communities that they are safe and security as individuals, as families, as communities. But tomorrow the spending review is also about huge investment in the future of our country. You saw last week the strategic defence review, huge investment. You saw what we're doing on free school meals. No government has ever done that before. And today the investment in Sizewell and the future of our energy in this country. So this is what we're doing to drive our country forward, the sort of investment we haven't seen for a very, very long time in this country.
And will you apologise tomorrow on winter fuel?
Sorry?
Will you apologise tomorrow on the winter fuel reverse?
The decision we made on winter fuel in the budget was the right decision. We had to stabilise the economy, and we've done that. As a result of that, by the way, we committed to the triple lock, something the Tories haven't done, and that means £470 went on to pensions in April, hugely important. I'm pleased that we're able to do this now. More pensioners will be eligible. It's important the decision was made this week because the costing will obviously be at the budget, quite right too, but we need to make it this week so that everybody knows where they stand, but most importantly, the system can be put in place to make those payments this winter. So I'm really pleased to be able to do that.
They have the PM there. He won't say he'll block Nigel Farage's plans to reopen coal mines in South Wales. He says twice he's looking backwards, not forwards. And that's because next year we could see Reform UK being the biggest party, maybe even forming a government in Wales, judging on current polling. And also we talked about the spending review. That's tomorrow, of course. This deal with Yvette Cooper, we're told she's unhappy with the deal. That's denied by the Home Office. But will it mean we're less safe? Because the rank and file police officers are very concerned about the shape of what's been negotiated with Rachel Reeves. Again, to be unveiled tomorrow, and watch that on GB News. And just finally, no apology there to pensioners who were left cold this winter because of his choices, the government's choices about withdrawing the winter fuel allowance. It's odd, isn't it? Why does no one say sorry in politics?
Good, isn't it? Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed for bringing us that interview with the Prime Minister from Suffolk. Yes. Did you know that Keir Starmer was the chief prosecutor.
Oh, he doesn't say.
He got that in. So we shouldn't be worried about police resources and everything the police officers are saying because he was chief prosecutor. And with this winter fuel, they've upset everyone, haven't they? Because now they're upsetting working families who say, well, I'm not having my winter fuel paid for. So it's,
well, I mean,
you go in all guns blazing to begin with, scrap it for 10 million pensioners. Now you bring it back for 9 million pensioners and you're upsetting everyone.
Does anyone believe that the economy is better off today?
It's more stable, Tom, apparently.
Does anyone believe that? I mean, since the budget, when Rachel Reeves cut the winter fuel allowance, that first budget, we had a spring statement. And what was in the spring statement? There were billions of pounds of cuts that needed to be made to disability benefit, and there were further tax rises too. And what else have we had? We've had tariffs from the American president, our growth forecast slashed in half. The government says that our growth expectation is the highest in the G7. Absolutely true. But do you know what? Every single country in the G7 has had its growth forecast slashed this year. Just because we're the highest in the G7, that doesn't mean things are better than they were back in October. They're actually worse than they were in October. They're just relatively less bad than they could have been.
There's one thing they can point to, isn't it? Oh, top performing in the G7.
But everyone's been downgraded. There's more money.
Everyone's got no growth really going on. But yes, Rachel Reeves has been turning the spending taps on, hasn't she? Been hiking those taxes, lots of ideological tax hikes that aren't really working out how she'd hoped. For example, the private school tax and the old non-DOMs. But yes, apparently the economy is more stable, and that's why pensioners are getting back that winter fuel payment.
Do you believe it?
Do you believe it?
Now then, Rachel Reeves has gone nuclear. She's signing off a £14.2 billion investment on Miliband's Sizewell C project as part of her upcoming spending review.
Treasury claims it will create 10,000 jobs and even generate enough electricity to power 6 million homes. However, it won't be built until 2033. And if any project by government are anything to go by, in your dreams, try 2040.
Well, let's talk to the director of Stop Sizewell C, Alison Downs. Alison, a very good morning to you. Now, 2033 to have this built, presumably construction will start before then. Why shouldn't it happen, Alison?
Well, I agree that 2033 seems pretty ambitious. We oppose Sizewell C for a number of reasons. I think just what's important to point out this morning is that although a lot of taxpayers' money has been allocated in the spending review, this is not a final investment decision. There's no mention of private investors. That process is going to take some time, still to be resolved. And critically, there's no mention by the government of how much overall this project is expected to cost. Now, the 14.2 billion that's been allocated, if you put that alongside money that's already been handed over to the project, you're looking at around £18 billion over the next 5 years. Now, two things to point out about that. £18 billion was the original budget for Hinkley Point C, and now we're on about £46 billion. And by the end of this Parliament, Sizewell C will barely be half built, so there's still going to be an awful lot more costs to come. And it makes it very difficult for voters to assess whether or not this is a good use of taxpayers' money, when there's so much information that's being withheld from us. Because the other thing is that consumers, for the first time with a nuclear project in the UK, are going to have to pay a tariff on their energy bills throughout the lengthy and risky construction process.
Alison, in the area, what does this mean for local people? How, the impact on the countryside, trees, wildlife, how many homes are going to have to be demolished to make way for this monolith?
Well, I mean, we came together in our hundreds at the weekend in a rally on Sizewell Beach. And one of the main things that drew people there was the sense of outrage at, so many trees and miles of hedgerows have already been demolished. I mean, the scale of construction goes right across the area because it's not just the main site. There's associated development, park and rides, roads, those kind of things. So we've seen a massive increase in traffic, a massive increase, in the impacts on a day-to-day basis. Now, two things. Obviously, the government wants this to create jobs. Any infrastructure project will create short-term jobs, but there's less than 1,000 permanent jobs at Sizewell C, and there's never any mention about what the impact is on the existing local economy. So tourists have already started to say they're not coming back because it's so depressing to see the destruction in the area. Local businesses are losing staff to the project, and that's impacting their viability. Rents in Leiston, which is the nearest town, only 5,000 or 6,000 people have already gone sky high. So unlike Hinkley Point C, which has a motorway, has Bridgewater, has Bristol, has South Wales, has a lot of, large areas of population nearby, we're a small rural area. And the expectation by the project is that a lot of the people who will work on Sizewell C will come from Hinkley Point C and from much further afield. So the limitations, that gives to opportunities for local people, is really telling.
Will, it's not, Alison, that you're fundamentally against nuclear power being generated, because clearly we need some to keep up with the demands of a growing population, but it's that the location is wrong for you.
Well, to be honest, it's a whole host of arguments. And I personally have grave reservations about nuclear power. It creates waste that stays toxic for centuries. And as we've seen at Sellafield, it costs an awful lot of money to clean it up. This is a very unsuitable location. It's on an eroding coastline. There isn't the infrastructure. There isn't the workforce around. And also, I think there are quicker, cheaper ways that we can generate more electricity, as well as invest more in energy efficiency to actually, manage our energy consumption. I mean, for example, Ed Miliband's own Warm Homes plan, he's been fighting for funds for that. And that's a way of reducing household bills and creating thousands of jobs across the country, whereas Sizewell C will increase household bills during construction. And it's absolutely inconceivable that it won't run late and overspent, just as every nuclear project of its type has done in the past.
Can I just ask, on a personal level, how much of your time does it take up being director of Stop Sizewell C, and how many years have you been campaigning like this?
Well, about 10 years ago, the community I live in, which is close to the project, decided to set up a community group to give ourselves a voice, because there was going to be so many aspects of this project that were deeply concerning to us. And then around 5 years ago, we decided that it was just impossible for the project to be adjusted in a way that was acceptable. And we became Stop Sizewell C, and I started working full time on it at that point. So, yeah, we've been campaigning on this for over a decade. I mean, I think, again, it's telling just how long it takes these sorts of projects to get going. And the Prime Minister's criticism of local people as being responsible for that is just utterly ludicrous. I mean, I think we only have to look at the nuclear industry for its failure to plan properly.
All right, Alison, thank you so much. Alison Downs, tireless campaigner and the director of Stop Sizewell C. Fascinating.
In 2022, by the way, the current Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, who's championing this development, mocked the Conservatives in 2022 for announcing Sizewell B, because he said, so expensive and it would take too long to build. Funny that, 3 years later.
He's building it.